Hi, and welcome to the Warhammies. With the 10 years of Tide celebration underway, Foutshark have announced that Darktide is going to be getting a new class on the 11th of November. Currently, no one knows what this could be, other than Obese Megalodon themselves, but with all things, a bit of smart speculation could shed some light on what might be coming. Join me as I discuss what I think the class might be and what I want from the new class coming on November 11th. Before we hop in, I'd like to mention there is an event going on in Darktide right now. This is all about rations. Yes, that's right, my Ogren players, rations. In short, like most events, it adds a small gimmick to missions. It's up to you whether you want to trust the rations from Nurgle-infested enemies. A few maggots here and there, but for our beloved big mans, food is food, right? You can hop into the game to check it out right now. First off, I'm putting it out there. I really want a failed tech-adept class. I've been wanting one for a while, and for those not quite well versed in Warhammer lore, Hadron, our crafting whiz, is a tech priest. But before any aspiring AdMech individuals reach this prestigious rank, they have to start off as lowly tech adepts and work their way up. Now, I think this is one of the main possibilities of what we could be getting. The main reason for this is to recently expand the tech priest kind of roster that we have at our missions, especially with new voiceovers that come with the game. If we do get a tech priest adept style of character, what would I want to see on the main three archetypes the class has? Well, the abilities are always the best place to start, as that's what's kind of the unique style and fun for most classes. First, I can imagine there being a short summon style power. Maybe not in the sense of like a servitor that's going to follow you around, because we don't need a replication of the arbitrator's dog. However, I would like to see a deployable ability in Darktide. We've only got a few so far, so I think Kill Team players are going to know what I'm about to say, but let's have a quick look at a servo turret. There are only a few deployable abilities in Darktide. The Psyker has a shield that can be put down, and the Arbitrator class has its shock mines. What I'd like to see is an anti-horde defensive option similar to how the shock mines work, but with a bit more aggression being the main talent. I think the talent trees for this one would allow us to customise this turret. So it would start off as, say, like a basic auto gun, just a small little stub gun attached on this box, so like two stub guns either side, which could then be upgraded to a kind of heavy volley las gun or a flamer. I think the possibilities of this are fantastic and, do open themselves to a lot of options. The Dog Companion with the Arbitrator DLC showed that the AI in the game is good enough to deal with specific enemy targeting. One of the nodes would be brilliant if it allowed you to kind of tag a priority enemy and the turret turn and immediately start laser beaming that target. Or perhaps you can ping to defend an area. I think this ability would lean into the defensive style of gameplay that Darktide does require on higher difficulties. Unfortunately, you can't keep on pushing. There are some points where you have to hold your ground. And I think a servo turret would be a really fun way to do this. You can just imagine a horde running towards you, and the AdMech player isn't shooting, he's just tinkering with something in the corner, only for a hail of las fire to be unleashed on a small, unsuspecting target with a happy little servo skull on the top. The keystone for this tree could assist with extra damage for the turret. So currently the Arbitrator has the Terminus Warrant, and I think that's a really, really useful keystone in terms of buffing up other abilities. But I think it'd be really handy if melee kills would buff your turret in a certain way, and range kills would buff it in another way. Potentially adding more cleave to your shots, more rending. I think it would be a really unique way to build the turret to actually force you to stick into kind of the thick of melee. Or, on the flip side to this, the keystone could focus on the turret being kind of a support focus, where actually, the closer you stay to your turret, the more stacks it'll build up, or it's more efficient at shooting. Really kind of hankering down into that, I'm turtling up here to kill these heretics, and then I'm going to move on. Another ability that I think I'd like to see that could be coming with an AdMech class is actually one from a previous Tide game. If you have a look at previous Tide games, it's a great way to kind of see what abilities that we'd have coming through. The Arbitrator's short charge, well, you could say that's Kruber's Foot Knight build. One thing we haven't got at the moment is the Bounty Hunter instant one-shot ranged attack. I'm specifically thinking of a copy of Saltzpyre's gun from his Bounty Hunter tree. But you could just imagine your tech-adept just fighting normally, sees a Plague Ogren in the distance, and a Shelter-mounted cannon just activates with its kind of arc rifle shot, laser beaming and melting the face of the Plague Ogren running towards you. While it'd be fantastic to have raw damage built into this kind of talent node tree, I think it could also double up as like a horde clearing weapon. Obviously, AdMech use a lot of shock and arc, and I think have some sort of like directed Tesla Storm beam would be fantastic, which could also double up, helping that support build, kind of buffing the team with that electric ability as well. The last sort of route I'd like to see down the tree really in terms of abilities is actually taking a quick focus on Rust Stalkers. They're these weird kind of sneaky beaky boys with loads of mechadendrites. Now, I'd like this to be the melee focus of the build. Now, I know this is probably going a bit rogue, where a lot of people will go, Warhammies, we want Skitarii as the melee lot, because that's what they do. And I'd go, no, Rustdoggers are cool, and I'd like to see it in the game. Mainly because I think Mechadendrites would add a unique role to the class. So for those who don't know what the hell a Mechadendrite is, it's the kind of extra limbs the AdMech have. Easiest way, think Dr. Octavius from something like Spider-Man, all those little extra limbs running around doing your bidding. Now, I imagine the main talent here probably being almost like a carbon copy of Scry's gaze, but running slightly differently. So rather than generating peril, I think AdMech could also run with a kind of overload mechanic similar to Psyker with weapon use. However, this is like an overdrive talent, which what it does is pumps all your abilities to like max stats. However, stops you from gaining heat, at which point you vent it all at the end and you potentially take some sort of debuff. But what I'd like to see is this essentially your Mechadendrites also building into the class. Now, I think it'd be fantastic if they had different states for your melee and ranged damage. So, for example, you're in melee, you're already sweeping at enemies, and I think it'd be really cool if the Mechadendrites were also attacking with you. So you go to sweep, and your Mechadendrite knocks through and cleaves through a few more enemies as well. It'd be really cool if they had the short little blades that you've also seen on them. And then this could be different for if you've got your ranged weapon out. One of the main worries you have when you've got your ranged weapon is, something's coming towards me, or potentially something's come from behind. It'd be really cool to have the Mechadendrites kind of parry incoming attacks while this overdrive is active for your Mechadendrites, just to keep on batting enemies away, while you can keep on unloading your stupidly powerful AdMech weapons into them. But those are just some unique ideas of what I think talents could be. But in terms of that, I like the idea of Mechadendrites because they can add some interesting passives that are seen on other classes, like the Ogrin, who can dodge into enemies and push them over. And it'd be really cool to see when this kind of overdrive with your Mechadendrites is active, that they can kind of slap enemies down, so you can do some aggressive dodging, similar to the Ogrin, but in a smaller bodied class. Rather than an overdrive system, if that's going to be 2 carbon copy of Psyker Scry's gaze, you could look at a Pounce. Again, it's another ability that hasn't come back from Vermintide 2, and I think at some point it's going to enter Darktide. I think it'd be really funny as the AdMech Ruststalker. It's going to leap into a crowd, your Mechadendrites like pouncing you across the way to then slap everything that you land on. Essentially, I'm looking at Bardin's Dwarf Berserker ability, which was always funny to see. But in terms of classes, it's not just talents, there are also blitzes. Now, I think one interesting thing the Arbitrator brought was deployable blitzes. Rather than just a one-time use grenade that all the classes seem to have, I think we'll get similar to that. I'd like to see more mines introduced, more of that defensive gameplay coming into Darktide, and I think the AdMech will get something similar. Unfortunately, the Arbitrator's already got a shock mine, so what other mines do we need? Well, there's the routine explosive one we still haven't got, and potentially a fire mine. I don't think they're going to start delving into other damage types. I think we're already expanding on shock. It'd be really cool if we got kind of a radioactive damage type, because AdMech are known for having too much radiation on their bodies, but I don't see that coming along because they've started to flesh out shock damage similar to how fire damage is. And AdMech are obviously machines, and there's a lot of shock. I think we could get something like a fire mine, which is again just defensive, building into that defensive style of gameplay for you and your turret. Now, I don't think we'll get this, but other blitzes could include a form of repair tool, assuming they allow turrets to take damage and be destroyed. I'm not sure I can see this one really being implemented just because of how the pace works in Darktide, and I know when they did the Arbitrator DLC, some of their devlogs talked about potentially the dog having health, and they said that wasn't just a fun gameplay loop. So I can't imagine we'll get that, but what we might get is a kind of Medicae servo turret with the AdMech that goes along. Maybe it can't heal you, but it could repair your toughness while you're in a firefight, and potentially just have passive regen for a set amount of time while your servo skull is deployed on an ally. I think that'd be a really unique way to add a support thing, and I'd love to hear some voice lines about your rejects not trusting this AdMech tech-adept, who's just there like, yeah, I'm experimenting on you. I think that'd be a really unique way to get a bit of kind of banter in between the characters. But the last blitz I'd love to see, we currently have loads of different grenade types. What we don't have is a targeted homing grenade. Now, I think it'd be really funny if the AdMech class had a servo skull that just floats around behind him, and as soon as you press that blitz ability, you can target an enemy, and it just goes for them. You can just imagine that you'd be kind of backing away from an Ogrin that's coming in for its final overhead, you've lost all your dodges, and suddenly you see from the glint of your eye a red, blazing, glaring skull flying towards you, detonating, and just completely blowing the Ogrin to shreds. I think that'd be a really fun way to do the blitz in this. However, these are all just fun speculation things. Remember to comment down below what you'd like to see. Now, onto the weapons. AdMech have a fantastic roster of weapons that I think could be really useful in Darktide. More specifically, one thing I really want to see that hasn't come back again from Vermintide 2 is dual blades. The Rust Stalkers use them, and they're really cool. And I think it would be a fun way to introduce them as class-specific weapons, in terms of having, well, the Rust Stalkers can have those, and as we know, Zealots could be seen with dual daggers. I think these would be a really great way to build into having dual-wielding weapons. Now, these blades could be really fast-hitting with good cleave, but struggle on armoured targets, and that's how you could then build the variants up. Maybe one's good at precision damage with double stabs, and the other's good at slashing through hordes. Other melee weapons that you could include could be the Electro Flail. We currently haven't seen any flail weapon types added in since Vermintide 2, and they were one of my funnest weapons to use. I used to love them, mainly just because it was really nice to see a flail weapon you could actually swing, charge up, and then just the satisfying thwack as you hit an enemy across the head with it. Now, I'd love to see the kind of AdMech twist on this, and the fact that it's an Electro Flail. So there's two ways I could think about how you could run an Electro Flail. The first one is, the longer you spend swinging it, the more energy it builds up for like some sickening, cracking thunderbolt on an enemy that you hit with it. Or, similar to how the Power Sword works, you could press alternate fire and it activates a charge state for the weapon that applies shock to everything you hit, kind of stunning enemies. I think I'd rather see the first one because it'd be really funny to see a really tough enemy coming towards you. You're just swinging that flail and you can see the arc charges building up, and then one tonk, it suddenly explodes across your screen in electric light. Other weapons that be coming to the class could be a two-handed Omniscient axe. Now, this could be one that a tech-adept has pilfered from Hadron on the ship, and I think that'd be a really fun way to kind of build it in, rather than he's earned this axe, it's been stolen from an actual tech priest on the ship. Part of that is, I think really the game needs to develop two-handed weapons a little bit more. There's not enough in the game, and I think unfortunately we're running into this kind of meta at the moment where faster, quicker weapons are better than slow, heavy hitting ones, and I want to see that kind of roster balanced out a little bit more. In terms of this weapon, Omniscient power axes are fantastic. They could be a heavy melee weapon with slow swings, hard hitting, but fantastic reach. Allowing it to be combined with then kind of the class's mechadendrites, I think that would be really cool at like clearing away chaff as you go in to stab the big enemy. They could also introduce staves into the game. The Electro Priests run them as a weapon option, and I think they're a really funny concept where we could just have like stupidly high impact damage that shocks enemies. I mean, because I think the Power Maul to me really is kind of disappointing in terms of what it could be. I think it would need a charge state rather than being the poor man's Thunderhammer. I think it needs a charge state similar to the Power Sword, that just kind of so it sweeps through and does loads of damage to enemies. So I think that's the melee weapons that would be coming to the class. Again, with the Arbitrator DLC, we didn't get too many unique ones, and I think it would be filled out with the rest of the weapons such as chainswords, axes, all of those normal things that you can get on most human classes. But for ranged weapons, I'd like to see this class get access to a new mark of Flamer. They were great in other AdMech games, such as Mechanicus, when dealing with hordes of Necrons that used to crawl towards you. And I think the class could use a really fun version of this, because it would allow potentially a tree splitting down into shock damage or fire damage. And I think a new variant into the game would be really handy. The Zealot could also get access to this to help bridge that gap. But I think a new one could potentially be similar to the flames we see on enemies. It has a longer reach, but sprays fire onto the floor and does less direct damage. More about coating an area to help your turret do more damage. But as for AdMech specific weapons, which is really probably the focus of what we'd want in a class, well, they have the arc rifle. Now, this could be similar to the plasma gun, but running with different overheat mechanics, or just make it a slightly better version that also stuns enemies with one shot, but has a cooldown period between shots. So similar to the plasma gun has a charge up, I think an arc rifle should have a shoot, and then a kind of a decompressed time, where you have to then wait before you can shoot it again. And then you could build up talents into kind of, refreshing that time on precision hit and things like that. I think it'd be really cool as well to kind of build in if they do get like mechadendrite abilities to help them carry weapons. So it can carry heavier class weapons, but it requires your mechadendrites to do so. So it potentially negates some buffs you get from your talent tree. I think that'd be a really cool like keystone to get midway down, is that your mechadendrites don't do as much, but they help you carry heavier weapons or two different range weapons at once, which I think would be really cool. Maybe you can't scope, but it carries a flamer and an arc rifle in one, and you can just left trigger and right trigger to shoot them. Other options you have, the pistol roster's looking a bit lackluster, so what we could do is flesh this out. AdMech get access to radium pistols, gamma pistols, phosphor pistols, all in their basic techie roles. So I think it'd be great for a pistol to like inherently set enemies on fire every time you shoot it, similar to the Volkite pistol out of Space Marine 2, that kind of explosion of an enemy once it kind of combusts. But I think they could also potentially introduce alongside a hand flamer. I mean, again, if you look at Kill Team with the recent kind of Sanctifiers Kill Team that dropped with dual wield hand flamers, I really want Zealots to get those. But maybe the Fat Shark will finally allow rejects to get access to a plasma pistol. Who knows? But that's really all for the video. My life's been a bit busy recently, and I've been waiting for a new update to drop in Darktide to kind of get me back into the game. I think similar to most people, I've been probably reliving my childhood playing Battlefield 6, but I think an AdMech introduction to the game might just drag me away from that. Now, this is all just speculation, so I could be wrong. We could just get a stim-riddled ganger from the Underhive who's completely off his nut the entire time we play, which also I think would be a great addition to the game. If you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I do Darktide content and other Warhammer content when it takes my fancy. If you made it this far into the video, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one.